As y'all saw on the flyer, today we have a featured author, Mel Finefrock from Denton, Texas. I first encountered Mel's poems from pen to paper. She submitted them, I think, starting that very first year, way back in 2010.
Yeah.
And one of the things that struck me about them was how colorful and visual and dynamic they were. So I was kind of surprised when I learned that she's visually impaired. But that isn't the only thing about them that is remarkable. So every time over the next, several years, I would see her name come up in the contest. I would be like, oh, good, this is going to be good. And it became harder and harder to nominate her as a finalist because I was totally biased, several years in. And in 2012, we were able to work past that bias, and she won first place in fiction for her poem, Optical Illusions. So if she doesn't read that today, definitely go check that out on her website. Since then, she has not only continued writing poetry, which you can purchase today, she's also written several pieces of nonfiction, which you can find in various places on the internet, and maybe she'll read a selection of that today. That was all the introduction I had.
And she has books here, right?
Yeah, so
She's on her way.
Huh?
She's on her way up.
Cool.
They're giving her entrance.
And then I said, well, you can't do that. And that's how we got here today. All right, Mel, thank you so much for coming.
Question, is there a possibility to leave a chair up here? Because I'm going to be awkwardly switching between two books.
Yeah, there's a book, or a book. Here's a chair.
Okay.
Binder or book, which do you want first?
I'll take them both. They alternate. It's part of my act. All right, I guess I'm sitting down. This will work.
Do you need a music stand?
No, this is fine. This might actually be easier on me. All right, let's see.
I'm going to put the microphone.
Okay.
And I'm going to sit on your side.
Yeah, don't do that. So Jordan, if you need the cord, it's in the small zipper in the back.
Okay.
I forgot to give it to you. Okay. Can everybody hear me? Okay, so before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you again to Coalition of Texans with Disabilities, VSA Texas, and Malvern Books. Yes, Dramatic Thunder Roll. For hosting this reading. I've done like 1 or 2 open mics before, but I've never done an official bookstore reading, and I cannot think of anywhere I would be happier doing it. So I'm going to start by reciting the only poem I've ever memorized. Did you get it ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. Reach for the stars, they told me. So I did. Days and weeks and months and years passed without event. I nearly lost hope, but finally, Spica outstretched her arms and shifted my way. That poem is called Hope Burns Blue, and the reason I decided to do it first is because today, as you guys performed, I noticed there was a theme about despair and about being uplifted from despair and about things that inspire and, about taking care of each other. So that's kind of what my poetry tends to be about, and I feel like that's really serendipitous and really fitting. So you guys all did awesome, and it inspired me to come up here to do my thing. So the first, or I guess second poem I'm actually going to read is from my book, Patchwork Poetry, which Malvern Books will be selling today. And it is called While at the Park. As you can see, Braille is huge, and it takes a while to get where I need to be. You should have seen my math textbooks in high school. They were a nightmare. All right. Warning. This swing seat has been designed for use by children only. Yeah, right. Tendrils of hair loosed from my ponytail tickle my smiling cheeks. A dense grove of trees reaches from the shadows toward the graying sky and its silver linings. The wind is cool as it sings past my ears, wafting the sweet perfume of dampened tan bark to my nose. I am all limbs and joints and dreams of freedom. I'm flying, but I don't believe in defying the laws of physics. I work with them instead. I become the pendulum and hypnotize myself. Next one is called Earl Grey, and I actually want to preface it a little bit. This one's about vision loss. I grew up with some sight, but my visual cortex decided to get bored and evolve. So sometimes when I listen to music, it has colors. In fact, John Bramblett, who did the cover art on my book, is blind and also has synesthesia, and it expresses itself in his paintings a lot. So this is about my synesthetic experience when I drink Earl Grey tea. One sip of Earl Grey and the hot, earthy steam on my face suddenly turns to a cold, salty mist. I open my mind's eye and behold a memory from some 13 years ago of my 10-year-old self leaning up against the railing of a ferry, staring in wonder at the iron sea below, teeming with foam as it laps against the siding and reflects the overcast sky as they meet and merge at the horizon. After trying in vain to see my own reflection on the water's surface, I feel disappointed, but only momentarily so, for I am just as soon distracted by the beauty around me. Hindsight whispers that it matters not what I see, rather it's how I see things that counts. And these visions are my reflection, not of my face, but of my soul. I glance down at my tiny hands, gripping the railing, and once more they are grown up, illuminated by my open window, and lifting a well-worn mug to my expectant lips for another sip of Earl Grey. This one's newer, and I have to preface it too because I realize it could be quite controversial. It is called Not by Sight, and I need to explain that I respect people of all faiths. I do. And I get a lot of comments in public that are well-intended, but people often think that there's something wrong with me, so they want to cure me, and it's not pretty. So I wrote this poem to kind of deal with that. I thought a lot of people might relate to it. Living blind can turn a simple grocery run into an altar call. Enter Good Samaritan. No introduction, just a hand on my arm and a prayer for my sight, my wholeness, to be restored. Am I not whole? My eyes took early retirement, but that doesn't make me tragic, less than. I am a collage of scars and stories, of train lines and tea leaves. I've had a good life. I've had a hard life. And I've had a full life. Today, I can't find it in me to gently correct her. In society's eyes, I am made invisible one moment or spotlighted the next, ready either to stand back or stand out. The pressures imposed by tokenism, by duty to educate, by forced intimacy, are enough to render me diamond rough. Her words come from the heart, and in a world where people are quick to say hateful things, her intentions are truly refreshing. But I wish she didn't equate seeing with being whole. Of course, I believed the same once. When I was small, I hoped for an unneeded cure. Now I find purpose in every aspect of my being. Even with my faith as upside down and questioning as Scorpio, I still sometimes think that everything is for a reason, a season. Certainly not meaningless, as Solomon claimed. Whether seeing is believing or believing is seeing, I find myself praying to her God, asking him to remove the scales from her eyes, to smooth the rough path between us, to help me forgive her, for she knows not what she's done. Thank you. That's the first time I've read that anywhere. So the next one is also new, and it's called Light Play. I forgot to mention that blindness runs in my family, and by that I mean literally half of us have it. So my little sister and I had really fun imaginations. And this is about, I kind of hear a lot of friends' poems where they're like, the sun spilled into the room through the cracks in the blinds. And I was like, oh, I love when sun spills in on the floor. I'm going to do my own take on this. So, this is dedicated to Cindy. I remember housebound afternoons when sunshine cascaded from window to carpet and fashioned a stage. My sister and I would row some days through pristine waters or leap across canyons teeming with lava. We were children of the light, and the sun was our muse. We basked in its warmth and the ability to see it still, until shadows grew long and our eyes grew tired and the curtains drew our fun to a close. This one could also be potentially controversial, so I feel the need to preface it. For a while, I worked with adolescents who had various types of disabilities. There is this poem. And I had one student who I knew for a very long time. And she was largely nonverbal. And some might wonder, well, how does a blind teacher, or insofar as I was a teacher, interact with a nonverbal student? And I must say it has its challenges. But we learned to work around it, and I mean, it was awesome. So anyway, this is about a rough moment where we found a way to communicate and navigate that barrier. And I did ask her family for permission before ever publishing this in my book. You scream again, and I flinch unseeingly beneath the impact of your angry palm. You don't hit hard, but I'm ashamed to admit it still hurts. My shoulders sag, riddled with tension. I've begun to question my ability to carry this burden after all, to despair what seems an inability to reach you. Wordlessly, you rest a repentant cheek against the hollow of my neck, and I marvel at how we fit together like two puzzle pieces, perfect, albeit jagged. Reaching inward, I dislodge my heart from the back of my throat, rally one last vestige of Atlantean strength, and continue the lesson. This one's also from my book. It's called On Taking Things Slowly. Sometimes our relationships kind of have a tide to them, and my partner Jordan in the front row, thank you for filming this. We had a time where we kind of took a step back, and this poem is actually about the period of time where we were relearning to be friends, and kind of learning to navigate a relationship together. I can't find this poem. Hang on. All right, here we go. Baby steps. Are your lips pressed to the back of my wrist when playing got too rough? And mine burrowed against your neck, laughing as we hug goodbye, with your trailing remark that my nose is puppy dog cold. Fondly, I remember the contrast of clumsy kisses from our youthful days, when sometimes we couldn't keep our teeth from crashing for the smiles on our faces. Yes, this time it's baby steps, but even those cover ground. Blue or even white, that's about as hot as it can get, as intense as it can get. So my hope burns blue meant that it was as hopeful as I could get. And of course I changed my screen name to that, and some blind dude in a chat room messaged me, and all it said was, "So does whiskey." And I'm like, well, I'll have to try that. While at the Park was August of 15. It's actually the poem that ultimately caused me to decide to publish patchwork poetry. I just felt very inspired, started throwing a collection of poems together, and voila. Earl Grey was in September of 2013. Not by Sight was March of this year. Light Play was literally a week or two ago. The Significance of Shoulders, probably sometime in late 2014, early 15. And On Taking Things Slowly is March of 15. So those are all the ones I've done so far. Kind of jumping around the timeline a bit.
All right, well, good.
We're ready for the next one? Okay. The next one is also a new poem. I guess I'll start saying when I wrote these. This one I wrote in May, and I dedicate it to my friend Beth. Bear with me one moment. Permanence is ephemeral. I learned this when I carved a name into tree bark once. I won't do it again. Even the tallest trees can succumb to an axe or wither to ash with a single lightning flash. Like Prognoscus, I am a namer, but as a poet, my weakness is my need for a medium and the bravery to name what is. It doesn't seem fitting to chisel a name into marble. I'm not sure I'm strong enough to really leave a mark. But suppose I freed the angel. Would she take flight without so much as a glance over her winged shoulder? If discovered, a message in a bottle could be mistaken for a mere speck of debris drifting aimlessly in polluted waters. But ashore, it would surely be wind buried if etched instead into hourglass sand. I can't write a name in the sky. The stars are unreachable, untouchable, the kind of braille that would sear my fingertips. Your name feels safe in my mouth. But if I let it out, if I get up the nerve to tell someone I love them, it isn't always what they care to hear. I've done it all. I've written love on my arms, given poems away, trusted fleeting female friendships in error. But somehow I can't ever seem to keep from stumbling in platonic love. For now, I'm trying my hand at whispering your name in metaphor, and so far I like how it sounds. I like its vibrant marquee across my mind's eye, and that your colors ring true. Trust is a daily decision. After all, I trust the sun to warm my forearms from dawn to dusk, but even on cloudy days, it's still there, diffusing through cumulonimbus and prism drops, until the sunshine sings in my veins. Permanence is ephemeral, but the sun won't die until I'm long gone. Thank you. I believe I may have read this one at April's, but bear with me because it's kind of a cornerstone piece for me. This is called My Name Spells Love, Not Pain. And I wrote it in June of 15. I think our names are something we grow into, and that the growing pains are more pronounced for some than for others. I hated my name. Melissa had become a swear word born on others' lips, and even my own. Sometimes there's still a rawness to its echoes. I've undergone a shift like a bumblebee beating its wings against the odds. The time has come to rewrite my name, Braille graphemes tinted teal, the color of survival, until Melissa spells love, not pain. I will make poetry of it, sneaking affirmations into my verses until I believe they're true. I will sing along with the Allman Brothers that I'm someone to come home to until the song sings me. And although I often flinch when others say it, my cheeks will always flush, and my heart will always flutter, and my knees will always buckle whenever he says it now and then, like I asked, because it's sacred on his lips, and it makes me feel beautiful. I have two more, both of which, if I'm not mistaken, are new. Okay. Second mic slap.
At least it doesn't slap back.
Right? Okay. Thank you for your patience with me. This one is called Landmarks, and I wrote it in June of this year. I actually would like to give a backstory on it. For blind kiddos and visually impaired kiddos, we often start orientation and mobility training early on, so that we can learn how to navigate our surroundings adaptively, blah, blah, blah. Well, they have this thing, this system that we use to navigate called landmarks and clues. Basically, if it doesn't move, it's a landmark. If it does move, like a trash can, don't use it to figure out where you are, because it's a clue and someone's gonna move it. So, I actually have a friend who asked me the other day, we were just kind of talking existentially about healing, and Kelsey asked me, well, what would that look like for you? And I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought, and I'm like, I'm not really an end goal thinker. I'm really bad at that. I think I just go as I go, and there's really no legend on the map to healing, and then boom, there was a poem. So, without further ado, There's no legend on the map to healing. You simply fumble your way through its maze-like corridors until you learn to recognize landmarks. When your lover holds you and you realize it's been years since you last flinched. When your name sounds less like a curse and more like a caress. When your silence thaws and crystalline words drip from your very pores. But healing takes time, and this is not the race against time. This is not the race against others' expectations of where you should, in quotes, be. After all, cycles were never meant to be linear. Like rain to runoff, to river, to ocean, to thundercloud and back, grief can reasonably repeat itself. Denial and anger and bargain and depression often sing rounds before acceptance brings an end to the requiem, allowing the birth of a new song. So when they ask you why you haven't managed to move past it yet, remember you are a student whose task is learning to move with it. And when they say your past should not define you, remember that while it's true that where you've been isn't where you're going, you are still the veteran of your experiences, a kaleidoscope of trial and triumph, or some days trial and error, and you need not leave behind those parts of yourself in order to remain whole. You will prevail. But until then, when you feel lost, plot your landmarks in cartographer's pen so you can see how truly far you've come. Thank you so much. This last one has a story too, oh boy, oh boy. So most of you probably won't know. I've been traveling independently for a very long time, and well, I had a bit of a scare once. In 2014, I was hanging out with John Bramblett, actually, the artist who did the cover of my book, because he's a good friend of mine. And I was headed home, and the train station was completely abandoned. Like, it was lunchtime, there weren't a lot of commuters, woohoo, the trains are really loud in Denton, really, really loud. And the station was not well manned. It's ADA accessible, but they did not have any kind of barricades. So when you're waiting for a train at the end point of the station, you want to get on. But the doors don't open automatically, so you have to like walk alongside the train using your cane 3-point on the left hand and touching for the door on your right. That scared me. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna give myself 3 tries and then I'll go sit back down. And I'll wait for someone. And if I miss my ride, I'll figure out a way back on the platform. Well, after the 3rd try, I was so shaken up I needed to take a step back. And I took a step back, and I was so shaken that the step back turned into a fall forward. Into the tracks, 2.5 feet deep, full of giant ballast boulders in front of the train, ready to depart in less than 5 minutes. Whee! No one was there. I thought to myself, well, I'm pretty sure that they check these tracks before the train departs because duh. But if I don't move, I'm going to die. I was pretty sure my left leg was broken in at least 2 places and shattered at the ankle. So what did I do? I checked my backpack, I checked my pockets, I leaned on my cane and I dragged myself over the edge, laid on the concrete maybe 1 foot away and screamed. And no, it wasn't like, ah, it was, which is totally not what I wanted for my debut. I joke about it now, but it was terrible. So someone came and they thought, oh, you must have slipped on the pavement. No, I fell in there. I got up. Where were you? The other side of the station. Why don't they have people at both sides of the station? So I was like, cool, well, I have to get home now. No, you're not going home. You're going to the hospital. Oh, your ankle's moving. It's probably just sprained. No, it's broken. Here, here, and all the way here. So they take me into surgery. I get a rod from knee to ankle with 2 screws in it, a 4-inch plate in my fibula on the left side, describing for any blind viewers in the video over there. And that has 4 screws, and then 16 big old screws in my ankle. And they're like, oh yeah, no worries, you'll be walking in no time, like 8 to 10 weeks. Yeah, that was funny. I was in a chair for like 5 to 7 months, then I transitioned to a walker at home, and then I transitioned to a crutch and a cane. And it took a very, very long time to heal. And it affected, obviously, some of my poems are about PTSD. So it affected my ability to ride the trains. And this is a poem about that. I wrote it last July. It's called Thief. Though I wouldn't say I've ever been fearless, I used to walk fast and unflinching. I felt safe in the knowledge of my surroundings, curtained though my eyes may have been. But that day I fell down, down, down. Sometimes I'm a survivor, others a victim. But at the end of the day, I suppose I'm both. I drag myself out with minutes to spare. But you shattered more than just my leg. Pieces of me were strewn between ballast and steel, then trampled as the train simply coasted out of the station. Recovery is about more than a surgeon's tools weaving titanium into networks of sinew and bone. More than a tattoo gun scratching poetry into my right leg to mirror the scars on my left. Recovery is about more than months in a wheelchair, months in therapy, months of enlightenment and grief, and reflecting on how strange it is who steps up in a crisis and who steps back. How some will point fingers, but some will lend a hand. 3 years later, and a few counties over, I take a different train commuting to and from work. My locomotive demons are never easy to face, but I've grown stronger over time. Even so, it's been one of my harder days. I deboard the train with my white cane sweeping before me in a nervous arc as I all but tiptoe alongside the tracks, wishing I could simply beam from here to my apartment. I wear a brave face, using my anger as an anchor to get through this moment because I realize you stole my walk. There's a difference between the act of walking and your walk, the spirit that makes your body its marionette. My legs have relearned the rhythm of putting one foot in front of the other. My limp is most pronounced on the inside as I struggle against cruel mistress post-trauma, lying to myself, or at least saying things I don't quite believe, like, you'll never fall again, even though I never guessed I'd fall in the first place and nonetheless did. The truth is, I've learned in all of this that you can never be quite sure of anything. I find myself grappling as fear and persistence suspend me in endless tug of war. I find myself wondering why I still try, or perhaps what it is I'm trying to prove. Because for all my courage, I'm lacking in confidence. But I tried giving up, and the prospect was impossible. Thief be damned. You stole my walk, but I'm moving forward. And I will win the race to reinvent myself.